Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of my Songs from Albums I've Produced series. I've done a couple of Stan Rogers tunes from the first and second album that I produced with Stan. And I also did a tune by Raffi, which is a record, a non-children's record of Raffi's that I produced. Today I'm going to move on to another artist who's best known perhaps as a guitar maker, and one of the best in the world. He made my instruments, and he's a close friend. But going back to the 70s now is when we first met, I guess, and he played on Stan's albums that I produced in those early years. He's a great instrumentalist and singer as well, playing mandolin, concertina, the pipes, whistles, you name it. And he's great. So Stan got the idea that he wanted his record label, Fogarty's Cove Records, to be more than just a vanity label. He wanted to have other artists come onto the label. And the first one that he brought in for in that context was Grit Laskin. He asked me to produce the album, and we produced it at the same studio that I had been using for Stan's albums, Springfield Sound, just outside of London here. And we had a great time doing it. Now, this is the album here. It's called Grit Laskin Unmasked. And let me explain what that's about. When I did Stan's albums, all of the musicians were hired on musicians' union contracts. But unfortunately, Grit Laskin was not a member of the union at that time. And so if you look at the credits on the first album, Fogarty's Cove, you'll see that Grit is credited as the masked luthier of DuPont Street. But anyway, by the time we did this album in 1979, we decided to unmask the luthier, Grit Laskin, and hence the title. So there's a lot of great music on this album, instrumental music and songs. And I'm going to do one that Grit actually wrote. And it's called The Photographers. And it's based around the fact that a lot of old traditional songs have sexual innuendo in them. They don't give the proper names to the sexual parts and all of that, but they do have, they attribute those parts to other things, shall we say. Grit decided to do that in this song. He used a traditional melody, and he decided to update the sexual references to then modern day. And I'm going to play it on the banjo. Banjo alert, okay. And it's called Photographers, and here it goes. And by the way, there's a new verse that Grit added at the end. I'll add that on. Early Saturday morning, while strolling in the wood, I chanced upon a lady who by the wayside stood. And what, pray tell, would such a lass as you be doing here? I've come to take some photographs, she said as she drew near. Says me to her, I do declare, this is a fateful day, for I have come to photograph the same as you did say. So I pulled out my Nikon F and placed it in her hand. She said, that's quite a camera you have at your command. Well, me camera so delighted her that with no more delay, she let me see her camera case wherein her accessories lay. I'm sure, says I, you've got most everything that can be bought. Just help me stretch my tripod before I take some shots. Well, we photographed from haylofts and up against the wall. If you've not photographed on a Saturday night, you've not photographed at all. She had her shutter open wide, for daylight was all gone. Likewise, my naked camera lens, it had its filter on. Well, this lady had experience with cameras, yes indeed, and I thought her exposures the best I ever seen. Although she seemed to tire not, as on and on we went, says I will have to finish now, my film supply is spent. Said she, I've had Minoltas, Yashicas and Rolets, Hasselblad and Pentax, likewise a Polaroid, Miranda like a Nicorette, a Kodak and the rest. But now I've had your Nikon F, and surely it's the best. Now the extra verse that Grit added to bring it more up to date. It's not totally up to date today because he wrote this a few years ago, but it's more up to date than the song was in 1979. Anyway, here we go. My humble little Nikon F grew into D3X. I'm longing for my lady friend and one more round of photography. I'd love to watch her flash her drive, her zoom leads would extend. We'd gloriously pixelate, and then we'd shout, the end. Grit Laskin, photographers. Thanks, Grit. What fun.